Look who it is, they. We're back again. I've used the same joke twice, but
Yeah, it's okay 'cause it's not really my catchphrase, but then most of my catchphrases, if they have any, are involved the word junkie or bastard. So feel free.
I'm not sure I get away with saying it.
Junkie bastard. It's not an issue. Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one actually because I have been chased in IKEA by a guy. Honestly, I saw him. 'Cause I was in the bit where you've got the flat, the kind of the flat trolley. I could see him running in the middle aisle, and he eventually caught me. Mate, big man, please, I've got my wife on the phone. Could you please call her a lazy boot? I thought, if it'll help your marriage, lazy boot. I said, oh, she'll be made up. Will she though? Will she? Very west of Scotland, so it's quite funny that people will ask you to insult the nearest and dearest, and apparently they love it.
It's a unique perk of the job, I suppose, isn't it? When
It
you come
kind
from
of is,
Still
it kind of is. I mean, weirdly, I'm a bit of a people pleaser. It comes from coming from an Asian family and being part of the community, and just kind of my default setting is to please people. So it's quite hilarious, actually, that I get to insult people and they enjoy it. It's probably quite a good pressure valve for me. It's probably quite good therapy. So yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, they all think that you're like the most sort of up for it person ever, and you're just like, I hate you.
Yeah, I know, it's great. It's kind of healthy, probably, because I'm that guy. I can't actually. I'm quite passive aggressive. So I don't really say what's on my mind until about 30 years later,
Right.
And then it comes out there.
You kind of bottle it all up.
Oh no, I mean, I did this in the cinema once. It was like someone was just chatting, right? And I think at one point I tutted audibly, and I think maybe rather than actually at the beginning say, please could you be quiet, by the time I spoke it came up here.
Right.
So what I came out with is, could you try whispering? Which is just, that's just like undiluted sarcasm. And that wasn't the right thing to do either. What I should have done was early doors, get out of the way, but
Yeah.
I didn't. I waited till it came there, and it came out there, and there was a fist fight, and the pensioner died. No, not true. So yeah, I wish I was a bit more like Navid and said what was on my mind, but I get a chance to do it in character, so that's good fun.
So that's right. We're here with Sanjeev Kohli, who you will likely know as Navid from Still Game. Where else will people recognise you from? What else have you been in?
So I'm in River City just now, playing AG, but I've not been in it for months, although I'm technically still in it. Technically, I still run the Oyster Cafe, but I'm on this guest contract now, so they're going to call me when they have some story for me, which I don't know when that'll be. They may know me from, in terms of what gets shouted at me. I'm also in a Radio 4 comedy that I co-write, I think called Fags, Mags and Bags, where I play a shopkeeper, a very different shopkeeper to Navid, Ramesh. And I write that as well. So if Still Game is my nephew, then Fags, Mags and Bags is my actual progeny, actual son/daughter. And I also was in a thing called Look Around You, which was like for anyone of a certain generation will remember Tomorrow's World, which was on a Thursday night after Top of the Pops, giving my age away here now. And it was a look to the future, and it was where you first find out things like 3D television or rocket science, or microbots. And Look Around You was a note-perfect spoof of that show, and I played a character called Synthesizer Patel, who loved synthesizers so much he changed his name. It was a lovely character to play. To this day, people still, not so much in the street, but on Twitter or Facebook, will fondly recall that character, and that was a joy to play. But if I'm being honest, it's mostly Navid from Still Game, and I'm absolutely happy with that because I love the guy and I love the show.
How much input did you have in Navid as a whole? You know, is it something that kind of was very predefined and you just came in and played it to a script, or did you have a lot of improvisation, a lot of kind of input on here's how he would respond to that?
No, there was no need for any improvisation. Ford and Greg are the presiding comedy geniuses that write every single word, every single bit of punctuation. For the first 5 series, by season 6, they had Bangladeshi orphans in a shipping container. No, I'm joking. No, Ford and Greg wrote every single word of Still Game. I mean, what we all brought as cast members was our own authenticity, physicalization, the voice.
Right.
For me, the voice is the key because that Glasgow Asian, if you will, accent had never really been showcased on television. So that was like having that, stealing that, taking that.
Right.
So that was what we brought, and we all brought our own thing. So if you speak to Jane, she'll tell you that she her mum and dad were quite old when they had her. She was always surrounded by older people, so she just like had different people that she could take bits from, the walk and the voice. And Gav, who plays Bobby, there's a couple of bar staff that he's kind of been inspired by. Greg will talk about his granddad who lived in Maryhill in Glasgow. Ford will talk about his uncle Barney. Mark Cox drew his inspiration from an actual priest, actually.
Oh, wow,
Who
okay.
became a priest because he got a free house. And that's true. That's actually true. And he became known, he's a friend of Ford's, and he became known as brilliant with money. So they'd send him to a diocese that was maybe struggling.
Right.
And he would pull the finances in.
Wow, okay.
So we all drew, in terms of the physicality and the voice, we all drew from real life people. And I think that shows. I think that's why a lot of the characters resonate. But in terms of the words, I mean, Ford and Greg, I think what they've done with Navida's, and I mean, this is something I could talk about for hours, how a Navida's formed. Because what you've really got is, you've got a character, it's probably running into three figures, the number of people that approach me and say, oh, did the boys base Navid on the shopkeeper in my area? And that could be anywhere from Baillieston to Inverness to Wick. They say, oh, we've got a Navid in our street. It says, well, there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. It's about, there's a reason why there's a disproportionate number of businesses run by Asian families. It's because we didn't really get job opportunities.
Right,
and
so you have to create them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying this from personal experience. I mean, my dad trains as a teacher and my mum trains as a social worker. And my dad watched all of his friends get promoted in front of him. And he had his own theories as to why a turban Sikh wasn't getting the work.
Right.
So at one point he just said, you know what, let's just get our own business. And that's what we did for 2-3 years. I helped my mum after school work in a shop, and I became obsessed with that whole dynamic of the shop because I love that dynamic. I think there's a real kind of childlike innocence to what was a confectioner, sweets, right? You look at the chocolate stanchion, as we call it in Fags, Mags and Bags, and you look at, and this is something that kind of passes people by. Look at the chocolates in a chocolate display. Mars, Milky Way, Galaxy, space theater,
it's out of this world.
aspirational. But people, I'll take a Mars bar, please, and they won't think about, that's named after a planet that we may or may not civilize one day. I don't know. I just love that kind of counterpoint between the everyday and the fantastical.
Yeah.
Or we have a lot of fun in Bags, Mags and Bags with naming crisps. Like we'll have like cheese and onion astronauts or chutney windmills. It's just like people just, well, like I used to be obsessed. I don't know if you still get them, but there used to be tiny little rubbery fried eggs you could get as part of your 10 pence mixture, as we called them.
Yeah.
And I thought, why aren't people completely baffled by an egg that's that size? Why do they accept this? But they do.
Or yellow bananas.
Yeah, foam shrimps, all that stuff. Monster Munch.
Just hearing you say that, I'm immediately remembering when you got Monster Munch in your beard.
Yeah. But like people don't question they're eating tiny monsters made of corn. They don't question it. And I love that they don't question it. It's become part of their everyday kind of thing. So that's one thing that I love about shops, but also I love the community aspect of shops. Because here's the thing, right? If you are a shopkeeper, you know everyone's business, whether you want to or not.
A bit like a hairdresser in that respect.
Exactly. Even more than that, because in a shop, there's a financial transaction and people are buying things. So, you can't, in your like quieter moments, you will extrapolate as to what they're doing with their life. So I've always said this, if someone comes into your shop and buys like a puzzler magazine, like a Sudoku and a bottle of Lucozade, that's a hospital visit.
Right.
What else could it be? Or if they come in and they buy like a box of tea bags and Jaffa cakes, chocolate digestives, Murder, She Wrote, box set maybe, okay? If they come in and buy like a copy of Razzle and a tub of Utterly Butterly, best not ask. But the point is that you're burdened with information. It's what you choose to do with that information.
Yeah, what you can kind of extrapolate.
Yeah. I have a lot more fun with it in Fags, Mags and Bags because the character Ramesh, he's a really lovely man and he uses that information for good. I kind of call it like a dry Cheers. So Sam Malone and Cheers, he knows everyone's business, but he's kind of like the glue that holds everyone together, and it's very much a community. So I love that aspect of the shops as well. And what you'll find is that a lot of Asian families have run these shops, and they've run them since the 70s, and they've had to put up with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So what they've done is, if you want to try and deal with a lanky Ned asking for a single fag, you can't hit them in the head with a baseball bat anymore. It's not fashionable or legal anymore. So all you really have is your banter. So they develop this line of banter. And that's how Navid is formed.
Right.
You get that banter with this beautiful, unique accent. Now, here's the thing, right? Navid has a Glasgow Asian accent. There'll be a version in this neck of the woods. There'll be a
100%.
Peterhead Asian accent. There'll be an Aberdeen Asian accent. There'll be a Arbroath Asian accent. There'll be a Bradford Asian accent. And what I love about it is that you get the Glasgow accent, you get the Asian accent, and it forms a third thing, a child.
Yeah, fusion.
A fusion which is the best of both worlds, I think. You know, Gwaller, eat dinner, torties, girly, whirly. I mean, I just loved saying it.
It's so good. But you're right? It's like, the best analogy I could give for it is you're playing an amazing song, but on a new instrument that's never been used for it before. You know, so you're hearing the same notes, different tone.
Well, I say this about Navid because he gets a lot of attention because he is probably, Navid and Mina are the most different.
Yeah.
Right? And they get a lot of attention, which is great. And they say, oh, Navid's very funny. And I sort of say to people, you know that you're that funny already. It's just that he's maybe represented what you were saying. It's like he's gone with that with a silver salver like that. These are your words, madam. You were saying these already.
That's exactly right.
I've just put a wee Asian spin on it. I just think Scottish people maybe don't appreciate how funny they are until it's slightly dressed up.
Something slightly different to capture your attention. You go, oh, that's really funny. Well, you know, you're sort of just representing it, as you say. But
it's funny
that does take some credit away from you that you deserve. You know,
but I've had the joy to be able to do it, to be the first to do it. It's interesting you use the musical analogy because I always compare it to a mashup. Do you remember the mashups in the noughties when they put like Destiny's Child and Nirvana together? And sometimes it didn't work, but when it worked, it really worked. And it's almost like one of my favourites is that it was Bootylicious and Smells Like Teen Spirit, and they called it Smells Like Bootylicious. And it's as brilliant as those two songs are, and they are. I actually think the mashup's better than both, and that's saying something. So that's kind of where I think Navid. I'm comparing Navid to Beyonce and Kurt Cobain now. Stop me if I'm getting ideas above my station. But you know what I mean? It's
no, I get you.
I love that the combination of the two forming a third thing, which is
new thing,
which is new in itself. Because I mean, in a lot of ways, comedy's like that. It's like anyone in comedy is, you know, I'm influenced by a lot of things. I to be slightly pretentious, I think. When you work in comedy, you're a prism, and it's what that prism is made of, and how you refract the light. But I like things like Morecambe and Wise, the two Ronnies, everything to Chris Morris, Amanda Iannucci, and all stops in between. Victoria Wood. I mean, if you picked apart my comedy writing, there'd be a lot of Victoria Wood in there. I think absolute genius, and God rest her soul. But there'd also be a lot of Amanda Iannucci in there. There'd be a lot of young ones. But then also you could hear some Les Dawson in there because of, you know, and then weirdly there'll be things from my family which I can bring to the mix, which maybe a white writer couldn't. You know what I mean? I mean, I used to write for Goodness Gracious Me, the old Asian sketch show, and I got to write out a lot of the, you know, those influences when I wrote for that. So I can't remember what the point I was making, but it was. I'm sure it was wonderful.
Yeah, the correlation between kind of comedy and different cultures. Yeah,
yes.
And I think actually that's a really interesting point as well, because you mentioned being allowed to or being able to express different comedy, and I think it's a very valid point that, you know, as an Asian man, you kind of can bring something new to the table that me as a white person I can't.
Well, yeah. I mean, what amazes me is when I was sort of writing, so I sort of I fell into the business. I started as a radio presenter who then got into comedy writing and then got into acting. And I always see myself as a writer who acts rather than the other way around. I mean, weirdly though, the last couple of years it's been mostly mostly acting, just the way that it's gone. And in a way, you could argue that they're both versions of the same thing. They're both storytelling, aren't they? So I speak to a lot of actors that say, oh, I can't write. I said, well, you kind of are writing. When you improvise, you're writing.
Yes.
It's just not a formalised process. A lot of writers say that they don't act. Well, if you ever try to verbalise something that you've written, then you are acting. I mean, that's how I got into acting. I used to write a sketch show with Donnie McCleary, who's my writing partner on Foot Bags, Bags and Bags, and we would act out the sketches. And that was acting. So, what was it you asked me?
Well, I think it's exploring kind of, as you described it, almost being allowed to or being able to bring something. And I think
that's what it was. That's what it was. So when I was like an established comedy writer, I would offer up ideas. I wrote I called it like an Asian version of Cold Feet. So I loved Cold Feet. I loved the format. I loved it was about late 20s, early 30s. People who hadn't quite found themselves yet. And I was that old. I was the audience for that show. And I'm also obsessed with the cousin relationship, because I think that's very much a feature of immigrant communities. I mean, I joke about this. In the Asian or Irish or Italian community, a cousin is someone that you celebrate that relationship. In the sort of wider white community, a cousin is someone that you get off with by mistake at a wedding, right? I mean, I know it's a vast generalization, but that kind of cousin relationship, just because of the way that the family dynamic works in immigrant communities, because we are kind of like clinging onto a rock, is, I think, a bit more celebrated. So I'd written a thing called Cousins, and it was about 5, I think it was 3 male, 2 female cousins. And like I say, I unashamedly called it the Asian Cold Feet. And it got quite far with the BBC, but it didn't happen in the end. But I would come up against opposition to it. And saying, oh, well, where's the white person in the mix? I think you don't need one.
And they would say that to you.
Yeah.
Right,
the commissioner would say, well, and I'd say, you don't need one. I mean, you're talking to someone here who grew up in Scotland and watched the goodies and watched the young ones. And those are my writing influences. And I'm bringing you new stories that you didn't have. So why would you not want something a bit different? Because how many stories are there? 13, 14, whatever it is. If I can bring you something that's set somewhere else, then why would you not lap that up? And I think that's what's happening now with the way that television is being made with the streaming services, is that, why not set something in the Chinese community in Peterhead? Because it'll give you something new.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, eventually you're going to run out of ideas if you don't embrace new things,
Of course. I had a meeting, a very interesting meeting, 2-3 years ago. A Glasgow-based producer had got me in a room with these 2 German producers. They had made a drama set in the Turkish community in Berlin. It was like a kind of like a police drama, and they wanted to repeat the trick in the Scottish Asian community. I thought, why did it take 2 Germans to think of that?
Yeah, be a bit forward thinking.
Yeah. Because that's the way it should be going. When you think of, what you watch on television, I mean, I'll happily sit and watch The Wire, which I did. And also as well, what I love about the way that things have gone in terms of the creative nature of the streaming services is I will watch something that's set in Baltimore and they won't try and dilute it for anyone.
Right.
I mean, I watched 2 hours of The Wire. I didn't have a baldy clue what they were saying, but once it clicked, I was in. I was locked in.
We were talking about the idea that a character can be a positive stereotype or a negative stereotype, and one of the things I wanted to ask you in that front is, what do you say to people now that would argue a character like Navid is offensive or can't be done anymore? Almost death by political correctness, for lack of a better term. What's your thoughts on that as an actual Asian man who's playing the character and grew up around people like that and actually was in a family like that?
Yeah, well, when I first got the part, I mean, there was a slight worry. I did worry about maybe what the community themselves thought. Oh, there's one Scottish Asian actor on television and he's playing a shopkeeper or the owner of a flammable cash and carry or a pharmacist. And the thing is that there's a reason why those stereotypes exist. I know from my personal experience that my dad, as a trained teacher, got his own business because he was watching his friends getting promoted. So, but it also it's a positive stereotype. It's one to be celebrated because it speaks of a very high work ethic. I mean, anyone that works in a shop will know this. But also, it's not just a high work ethic. I mean, a lot of these shopkeepers will go into really quite kicked-in areas where if we've been honest, I mean, they face a lot of racism, a lot of jealousy. They're the guys that are driving the private number plate tan Mercedes, so they're going to come in for a lot of stick. But and they have to have a lot of gumption and a lot of courage to go into their work every day, and they earn the trust of the community. This is why I was talking about how Navid is formed. That's why these characters are popular, because they've kind of their time served. They've been at the coalface, and I just think it's something that we can celebrate. So if someone says to me it's a stereotype, well, yeah, I'd agree with them, but there's a reason why it exists. I mean, I'm sure I'm not a statistician, but I'm sure if you crunch the numbers, there would be a disproportionate number of Asian families in the UK, probably the world, that run convenience stores and newsagents, and I think, well, celebrate it and turn it into a positive, because he's become a bit of a kind of folk hero almost. People Kids loved Navid. I mean,
100%.
that is that to me is the one you take to the bank, because kids will tell you if something is shite. They will not be hesitant about that. And I love that. That it can backfire slightly though, because I remember once I was around at my sister-in-law's, and it was her son Harry had his friends round, and they were up in the attic, and they found out that Navid from Still Game was in the house, and they got quite excited. And they decided to put on a wee play for me, a little still game. Oh, that's really cute. That's really cute. So they all picked a character to be, I'll be Jack, you be Victor, I'll be Isaac, I'll be Navid. Apparently they fought over who'd be Navid, which is lovely. And wee Blair, very ginger Blair, got to be Navid. And he really went for the accent, but he really got it wrong. And it came out like Jamaican patois. So he was saying things like, here is your chewing gum, here is your change. And I was trying not to laugh because he really went for it, but he got it wrong. But it was really gratifying that they would want to play this 70-something Muslim Asian shopkeeper, because they felt that he resonated in some way and they found him funny. I mean, that's gold dust, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You can talk about comedy can do that. It's a Trojan horse. You can.
It's a bit of a bridge, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I think you can almost fool people into. Cause what I think a character like Navid does, it celebrates the 90% that we have in common rather than 10% that might be different. I mean,
Right.
In the noughties, I remember, I think I got 3 auditions in a row, and they were all terrorists. I'm thinking, oh, Christ's sake, why would, we went through a phase where we were demonizing Muslims in fiction, whereas I think Navid humanizes
Yes.
Muslims, and my God, his religion doesn't even come into it until quite late on. It's not like I'm an Asian, I'm a Muslim.
Yeah, no.
What is he? Sarcastic. He's lots of things before he's a Muslim and an Asian. They come quite far down in the mix, and I think that's where the writing is really, really clever. It's not hitting people over the head with it. It's that time when he goes to Hyperdales, and everyone's got the Hyperdales, and and he has a big speech in the bar saying, where are you in my time of need? I've been there for you. Mm-hmm. I put up a lot of shade, graffiti, Neds. Even him just saying the word graffiti, one word graffiti, you know what he's talking about. And it's not like Ford and Greg are banging people's heads with that.
No, but there's,
like,
there's a message to it.
There's a massive narrative there,
and
massive
it actually
backstory.
lets the viewer work out some of it on their own,
Exactly.
which is always going to have a bit more impact than shouting and spelling it out.
Of course it is. Of course it is. People like to, like you say, don't want to be spoon fed. So I don't have an. Yes, yeah, I say it's a stereotype, and it's a positive one. And I'm happy to be. Although I did worry about how the community would react, and I remember.
How did they react?
Well, that was the thing. So the shop that was near us was run by a young Punjabi Sikh family, and I did avoid going in there. I have to say, when the show started going out, I did slightly avoid going in, and eventually thought, do you know what, need to break the duck here. So I went in to get my morning rolls, very gingerly, morning rolls, and she said, what was her name? I can't remember, but she was really funny, and she said, what are you doing next week? I said, why? She said, oh, my brother's died in India, could you run the shop for me? And that was obviously the storyline from one of the Still Games, and then we had a laugh about it. And she said, by the way, my family love it.
And that's when you started to figure out that it's going to be well received.
Oh yeah. And also, he's nobody's victim.
No.
He is the richest guy in Craig Lang. And also, what I love about it is that he doesn't run that shop or that marriage. It's Mina.
Yes.
And that's another thing that's very subtle in the writing is that Mina runs things. And my God, I've grown up with some really, really strong women that let the guys think they're running things when they clearly aren't. My mum, absolute unit. And, in fact, my dad didn't mind that she would make the decisions because she was more capable in that way. So I've grown up with strong women, and they could hit you with a moccasin from a moving Mercedes, 30 yards. I mean, no nonsense women who absolutely ran things, incredibly capable people. So I love that as well, that wee dynamic. I love that Mina has the last laugh and how rude she is.
Yes.
And how cursed, to use a Scottish word, she is.
One of my favourite things about Mina is that for the entire duration of the show, you actually never see her face until the very last, or one of the last scenes of the very last episode.
The fade out sequence. Yeah.
So good. That was just so clever. And kind of Gavin, when he was here, who played Bobby, when we talked about that last episode, I mean, I cried my eyes out. It's a comedy show. And I'm like, it goes back to what you said about these characters are pillars of your community and they represent your family, your friends, your Hogmanay, your Christmas. And every year in my family, it's when it's quiet or when you're by yourself at Christmas time or once the party's died down, it's you go back to Still Game. And that, it's like a warm hug. Do you know what I mean?
People have said that, and now that it's on Netflix as well, it's very easy just to put it on and have a pal in your living room.
That's exactly.
And they'll have it on. I mean, I'm the same with Frasier. I'll put on an episode of Frasier, and I've seen it 50 million times, but it's like having a pal there. It's like you say, a warm hug. It's like a fleece chenille, if you will, dressing gown. And it's very flattering that people hold Still Game in that regard. Because as a comedy fan myself, I know how comedy can
help people.
Help people.
100%.
Yeah.
So was there a moment that helped you, or even if not helped you, made you laugh? Do you have a favourite Navid moment or favourite off-camera moment?
My favourite, I had a lot, but I very selfishly loved the episode where Navid has the midlife crisis.
When he's dyeing the hair.
Yeah. My favourite scene, and it's on my show reel actually, is when he goes into the bookies.
Yes.
Because here's the thing, right? I, as in Sanjeev, right, very sheltered upbringing in Bishopbriggs in Glasgow, private school, all that. I'd never been into a bookies in my entire life. My mum and dad were not interested. I'd never been in. Walked past plenty, never been in. So when I go into that fictional bookies and I pick up the pen and say, "Oh, look at the Tor TV pens," that was me asking that question. Why are the pens so small? Is this IKEA? Are jockeys only allowed to bet? Am I a giant? Very, very weird. So I channeled that. But also he has a wee journey in that scene because he's not interested at all. And
it's
then
a bit of an
Tam
enlightenment
gets
almost.
him involved. And so you get that full journey. That was great fun. That whole episode was great fun for me because he has his first drink and he sings the Carpenters and and then I get carried out by
Mina.
By stunt Mina. I remember when that happened because it was the stunt Mina she was this really wiry mixed race London stunt performer in a fat suit and a Shopkeeper.
Right, okay.
Somewhere I've got a Polaroid of her and the real Mina having a cup of tea together. Pigtails, Shopkeeper, the works.
I need to see that.
I need to see it because I don't. I'm done with it. And as she's carrying me out, having punched me in the nuts, and carries me out, and I say my line. I remember thinking, drink this in. This will never happen again.
Right.
Because getting carried out of a bar like that, like a plank of wood, she was strong. Moments like that are like priceless, and Navid got to do a lot of fun stuff like that. So yeah.
And so for you, not as Navid but as Sanjeev, what's exciting you now? What are you working on at the moment, and what does the future look like?
Well, I've had a lot of fun acting jobs, kind of like small parts in big productions. Because what I hate about my work is it's precarious. You can have good weeks and bad months, but I've come off a really good run of interesting acting jobs. So I'm in series 2 of The Rig, which is set on a rig. Spoiler alert. Obviously, people survive the tidal wave, the tsunami that happened in the first. Oh God, I've ruined it for everyone. Because there is a series 2. It isn't just set in a white room. There's people in it. I'm one of them. And that was fun. It's got to play a doctor. So I was a medical student for 3 months. And my mum does occasionally, it's a massive stereotype, but it's true. My mum and dad absolutely worship doctors. They worship doctors in that way where like 90% of the doctors that my mum and dad know are wankers. And yet they still worship them.
Because they're doctors.
He's a hematologist. I couldn't give a fuck. So I'm playing a doctor. So what I'm going to get to do is I'm going to get them to grade it so it looks like a documentary.
and then send it to your parents.
Send it to India. Yeah.
I did it.
I finally did it. I actually went back to medical school.
So I can already see the shoe flying towards your head.
Yeah, exactly. From that, bang. So I did that. That was good fun. That was filmed in Leith. I did one day on a murder mystery, which was brilliant, called Moonflower Murders, which is actually a spin-off of a thing called Magpie Murders, which I did, where I've got a scene with Leslie Manville, which is smashing, and I got to meet Mark Gatiss, who's a bit of a hero of mine.
Yeah, he's amazing.
He's amazing. Really nice guy as well.
I loved him in Sherlock.
Oh, he's fantastic. He's just a massive brain. All the League of Gentlemen guys, though, are just, I'd love to work with all of them. They are, it's almost like a brand. They've got their own brand. It's like a factory.
A persona almost.
It's wonderful what they do. Everything they've done from the League onwards, Psychoville and Inside Number 9 is just, I don't know how they can come up with so many different forms of narrative, how they're so good at everything. They're embarrassingly good. It just makes you feel really lazy and shite when you watch what they do.
It's like doctors.
Oh, exactly. Moonflower Murders. Then I did another. Oh no, it was a thing called Dinosaur, which is a sitcom set in Glasgow that Ashley Story stars in and is co-written. And I think actually that's a really interesting project. It's very well written, great cast, but also it's going to be a very modern look at Glasgow, which I think it needed. I think people are kind of talking about what the next still game is going to be. I don't think there needs to be a next still game. But what I do think is that Scotland needs to be...
Yeah, moving on.
Yeah, it needs to be Scotland that we recognise. And this feels to me like a very modern take on Scotland. And by the way, really funny and clever. Ashley Story's a very, very funny, clever person, and that comes through. A great cast. In fact, Greg Hempel's in it as well.
Right.
We both play kind of sort of, not sparring fathers-in-law, but we are both fathers of a bride and groom to be. So that was a great thing to do.
A very different dynamic for you guys,
Very
right?
different dynamic. So that was really, really cool.
And you don't have to wear all the makeup or do you?
No. I got to play a very arsey art critic with very small glasses, which is it's a lot of fun. Yes. So that was a good laugh. And then I was in Malta a couple of weeks ago filming a thing called the Madame Blanc Mysteries, another murder mystery, which, by the way, I came flying back to murder mysteries during lockdown. I don't know, I think I'd maybe been guilty of being a bit sniffy about murder mysteries.
Right.
But see, if you sit down and watch a Midsummer, they're really good.
Yeah.
And actually a lot edgier than you think they're going to be.
Yeah, sometimes they get away with being a bit darker because you know what you're getting into, right?
Yeah. Even I think that Columbo's amazing.
Yes.
You know, Murder, She Wrote, by the way. Billy Connolly did a Murder, She Wrote. Do you know this?
No.
Billy Connolly is in a Murder, She Wrote.
Oh wow! Okay, I need to watch that.
I kind of I'm glad that I've done a couple now. So the next thing is you talk to any actor, right? They don't want a BAFTA or an Oscar anymore. They want Death in Paradise because they fill it in Guadeloupe. And I know a couple of people that worked on it, and apparently it's the dream job. You shout cut, and before you know it, you're knee deep in
sunbed.
Yeah, there's a swordfish steak on the barbie. So hopefully all roads lead to that. But also, I mean, I just watched the Kenneth Branagh, the latest Agatha Christie, and I adored Agatha Christie when I was at school. I read all the, not all of them, but a lot of Agatha Christie, and a lot of there's a thing called The Three Investigators that Alfred Hitchcock presents, The Three Investigators, and it was all these wee murder mysteries, and I loved them, and it kind of there's a real innocence to them, but like we say, you can get away with being a bit darker because somehow
it matches the tone.
Yeah, so hopefully more like that. So yeah, quite a lovely mix of work, and I mean, it always happens in our business. If you want to get work, book a holiday, and it will,
it'll come in for the exact days you're anyway.
Or
always,
yeah. But thankfully, the 4 jobs kind of jigsawed. It's had a nice run of jobs. So in terms of the future, I mean, also, we're going to be writing and recording Series 11, The Fags, Mags and Bags, which is great. We've been doing that since 2007. I still love doing that, and Radio 4 have been really good to us.
You're also out doing Old Pals at the moment, is that right?
That's the other thing we're doing is basically, it's a genre that's kind of come out of COVID. People, but also it's off the back of social networking and camera phones. People will want a PCV now, so... in fact, so basically what it is, it's an audience with, and then a Q&A sort of thing, and it's quite an easy format. So for the first half of the show, we get interviewed, much like this actually, the 5 of us. So basically, it's the 5 out of Still Game that aren't Ford and Greg because they're doing their own thing with the gin and the whiskey and all the rest of it. So the 5 of us will come along, we'll answer questions, and then second half it's questions from the floor, so people can kind of. Because they do feel like they own the show, so in a good way, so they get a chance to ask their questions, and you can get a meet and greet and all the rest of it.
Right.
I mean, that's the thing, is that we know a promoter down south who wants to book us for gigs down south, and he also looks after Joe Pasquale.
Yeah.
And he said that he had 2 gigs booked with Joe Pasquale. One was a straight stand-up magic show, and one was one of these Q&As. The Q&A sold out before the other one, because people want that extra bit. You talk to any band, they have to sit at the merch stall and sign the posters after. That's part of it now. It's an experience where you actually meet the turn.
People want experiences now more than a picture of a concert. They actually just want the picture with you. They actually don't even care for the concert anymore, which is sort of weird as an artist.
It's a bit weird.
But it's also a big compliment, I think.
I think so. But I think it's just the way that I know a lot of bands get quite sniffy about that. Like, why are your phones in the air? Well, they have paid to be there, and you can't make money out of recorded music anymore. So, if they've showed up at your gig and paid the money, then you kind of have to...
Yeah, and let them do what they want.
Let them do what they want. I mean, but it's interesting how the kind of power, the shift has happened. But who's talking about this? Chrissy Hynde was talking about this in an interview. I don't know her personally, by the way. She was talking about how incredibly entitled people are with a camera phone.
Yes.
They're incredibly entitled. And
they'll just walk up. Do you get that? People just walk up and they don't ask politely. They just, I'm going to take a photo of you.
Yeah. I was getting my luggage from Carousels with the family. Oh, here in the phone went up straight away. I said, if you'd have asked, I'd have said yes. And I try not to be sniffy with people because I don't...
You must get it a lot.
But I don't want to take it for granted. I mean, we're nothing without the fans. I mean... Without the fans, you're just mumbling into a vacuum. So, but when people, it's like anything. If people are nice to you, you're nice back.
Respect.
People are polite, you're polite back. And I try to be polite when I can because I was talking before about being a people pleaser. I've always been a people pleaser with my family, with the community. So I would hold the door. This is true, by the way. I would hold a door open for someone so that they would think that Asians held doors open for people.
Right.
And now I'll hold the door open because I want them to think that I'm not a tick because I'm on the television.
Yeah, you're almost trying to disprove.
It's almost like
idea.
in Scotland as well. They kind of want to trip you up.
They want you to be a prick because you're successful.
Yeah, so basically. I'll try and be disarmingly nice to people. And I did. I managed to outmaneuver. I got real divorced dad energy from this guy in a club once. And he was really, really off with me. He was saying to me, that guy says you're Navid from Still Game. I don't believe him. I said, well, I'm Navid from Still Game. Prove it. How do you want me to prove it? What's your date of birth? How does that prove I'm Navid? Also, I don't really want you to steal my fucking identity. Yeah. So I lost it a wee bit with him, but eventually I was just overly nice to him and he kind of had nothing.
You don't give him any ammunition.
Yeah. It's exhausting, but it's, I'm lucky in that weirdly Still Game is almost universally loved, so I don't, luckily.
It doesn't have haters in the same way as some
imagine being a footballer.
Media. Yeah, exactly.
Especially in Glasgow. Half the population wants you in the ground.
Yeah, quite literally.
So in that case, I never ever take it for granted.
And so to see us out, can you give us your favourite Navid line?
Okay. This was, in terms of, it's not even an original line that Ford and Greg wrote. It's just a very, very funny turn of phrase, and it's got a beautiful rhythm to it, which is practically hip hop. And it was the episode where it was the pub quiz, and they're auditioning people to do the pub quiz, and Margot comes in and she gets the gig, and played by the wonderful Gail, and who's now in River City actually, and she's a fantastic singer, by the way, amazing. Anyway, so Isa comes into the shop and she says to Navid, "Don't want to speak too soon, but it might be romance in the air with Bobby and Margot." And I say, "Give the rest. He couldn't get his hole in a barrel of Fernies." And it's just that he couldn't get his hole in a barrel of Fernies. It's just a beautiful rhythm. It's musical. And also, the way I said it, I think I was pricing something, so I threw it away. And I love seeing that when you don't...
Yeah, the throwaway.
Throwaway thing. And you can hear the... I remember going to the audience screening, because what we do is we record the audience laughter.
Right, okay.
Because you have to with the BBC. You can't fake laughter anymore. Canned laughter, thing of the past. So you have to show the episode and then record the laughter. And I remember people were laughing so hard for about 2 minutes they didn't hear the dialogue, and they had to pull the laughter in the mix. And so that's possibly my favourite line. Possibly. Aye.
Thanks, Sanjeev. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.